All right. So you guys can see my screen now, right? Awesome. So going over identity shift and more specifically about when it comes to creating habits that should be aligning with your identity, it's going to get you to your goals a lot faster because the average person may look at what they currently have, the resources, what they currently, whether it be their money, their wallet, their physique, they look at who they are currently, and then they look to be qualified to do the work in order to be successful, right? Like they look at like, oh, do I have enough time to go to hit the gym? And they look at that rather than making the time, right? Like being the person that has already achieved those goals is going to get you a lot farther along to your outcome versus looking at what you currently have and making decisions based off of that. All right. And to go further into this is that your current self, you have to really make sure that there's less of a void between your current self and your future self. If you want to be, if you have a goal to, you want to be super specific on what that looks like, what your current self, like what risk they're willing to take, what results they've achieved, what habits they live, and in order to get what you've never had, you're gonna have to become who you've never been. And sometimes that means like taking scary jumps, doing scary leaps and taking on new challenges or having new habits you haven't done before. Because if you want to see if a result that you haven't experienced yet in your life, whether that be, in the fitness space, in business and relationships, you're gonna have to try something you haven't done yet. All right. Now, this is when it comes to identity hijacking, is that I want you to think about this as if you're like a new, like you're trying to download a new software into your computer. All right. Most people, they wait for the results in order to feel qualified, right? But it takes it's too long. It's too slow. All right. Think about like, you could probably get to your goals with enough time and enough patience and enough, like letting yourself believe that you're not qualified yet. So maybe let's say, for example, you want to do a marathon, right? And like first you decide to do the 1 mile, then the 5K, and then you do the, but and before you know it, like eventually you do get to the marathon, but the reality is that if that was a goal of yours and you want to get to there, like there is a like there if other people have done it before, it's not and especially if you're someone who is in good shape, you're capable of doing it, it's all up here. It's all like when it comes to your mindset, like how qualified do you believe you are? If you don't think you're qualified to do something, you probably won't do it. And what I mean by that is that it's probably because you're the avatar that you have embodied. You need to change that avatar to someone who is qualified, to someone who is capable. And every day there's an opportunity for you to like you're allowed to decide to reinvent yourself. You're allowed to do that at any moment. Like you don't have to, stay the same person every year. And you don't have to wait for New Year's to do that either. So, this is what, identity hacking it's basically installing a new operating system of your future self now. So you're going to adopt the traits that would make the results happen. What that looks like is, you're going to like, get very specific on what avatar you're going to embody. Like and get like look at the results. Like if you want to be the athlete, the CEO, or the closer, or someone who has the traits, the leader or the you know the action taker, the person who you want to be. You look at every action that they do. All right, you're going to download the tonality, how they talk, the look at how the habits they have, like when they wake up, what people that they surround themselves with, what they do on their free time, what they do, and really try to like if you want to be a billionaire, even, like you have to really embody those habits. You have to embody those traits before you can get there, and believe that you're capable you before you get there. All right. So whenever fear, like you feel like, like that's not me right now. Like I should take the back seat. Like, no, like you're 100% wrong. You need to like lean into that fear every time. Because when you feel like like you're underperforming or you're not doing well, like you're doing a lot better than if you were to not try at all, right? Like if it if you were to if you were only 5 failures away from hitting your goals, like 5 lessons away, you how fast would you want to fail? All right. So this is just an example of like two salesmen that, there's this amateur, they follow the same, they have the same job, but two different entities. There's on the left you have someone who's thinking like, "Oh, I really hope they buy. Like I really need this commission." Very anxious, seeking validation and very pushy. And whenever they hear no, they take it very personally and they crumble, right? And then there's the pro who, you know, internally they believe that like what they have is valuable. So they're going to qualify the prospect for help and they're looking to change the person's life. Their energy is detached, like they're not attached to the sale. They're certain of themselves and ultimately they're authoritative. Like they know like what it takes to get a certain result, right? And whenever they hear no, like they're unfazed, they're not emotionally invested. They're curious. Maybe they dig deeper. The point is that, you can shift your identity in the snap of a finger. Like you don't have to be, every day you have an opportunity to reset, you know? And, if you were to take this into like a fitness scenario, right? Like the person who's trying to lose weight versus the athlete. All right. Let's look at the left. The left, the person's looking at a menu and is thinking, can I have this? Like, is a burger healthy? All right. The athlete's going to say, yeah, that burger is great. The only question they have is this going to fuel me? It's very performance and purpose driven. The dieter is thinking, I need to have a bunch of salads and I need to go on keto and I can't have carbs because it's gonna bloat me and and it's coming out of a place of scarcity. They're, thinking that they can't because they're taking on the identity of someone who isn't an athlete, who's not thinking of for performance or thinking of restriction and deprivation, and then on the left you have the person who who set an alarm at 5 a.m. and is thinking, do I have to go? And negotiating with their non-negotiables, that like at that point you might as well not even set the alarm at that time. If you find yourself hitting snooze, like do yourself a favor, at least be honest with yourself. If you don't have to wake up at 5 a.m., make that non-negotiable. Like, okay, am I going like what time am I going to wake up tomorrow? And really like be a man of your word, and or like really own up to it. Like if you don't have to, like, is it every time you're dishonest with yourself, you're teaching your brain that your goals aren't that important, that you're okay with compromising your goals, and you're okay with doing that. If it is time to train, right? And if it's routine, it's like, all right, hey, Monday, we hit the ground running. It's let's say you have to wake up at 5 a.m., you do it because it's time to train. You're teaching your brain like, yeah, like if I say I'm gonna wake up at this time, if the alarm goes up, I'm up and I'm ready to go. All right. And on the left, you have the dieter who's like thinking, I failed. I missed this whole week. I might as well just quit. I might as well just, you know, have, yeah, and that's this all or nothing mindset that the person on the left, who's just who's focused, who's very attached to the result, right? Whenever you're attached to the result, guys, you end up focusing so much on that you forget to enjoy the journey, right? You forget to romanticize the ups and the downs. You have to like fall in love with the process, the identity shift itself more than the result. Because when you focus on the result and you realize that like it's gonna take a lot of delayed gratification, it's gonna take a lot of trial and error and adjustments and learning along the way, it suddenly doesn't seem so glamorous. But the results will be like the results always taste better than the discipline. But if you can stomach the discipline, in the beginning it might feel like suffering until it tastes like victory. That the athlete, the person who embodied the athlete is going to adjust their schedule. They're going to make time to train. They're going to look at food that's going to fuel them. The point is of that difference is that you want to ask yourself, are you interested or are you committed? Right? Because interested in your goals, interested in, that's not good enough. You're gonna have to be committed. What that means is that your preference, right? Like it might be preferable to have the time to work out in the evening after work and have the energy to work out. But what happens when you don't, right? The reality is that if you want to have more energy, you people like on the one side of the spectrum, people they work out because they want more energy. On the other side of the spectrum, people don't work out because they don't have energy. So which person do you want to be is really it's all up to who you want to be. If you want to be the person who is a victim to their own mind, like because the thing is that that's the only thing we can control is how we think and our own mindset. And if you can't control your mindset, then you end up becoming victim to your excuses and you end up being the bottleneck inside of your progress, your own growth. So, doing an audit over like what decisions you're making and why and what reason they're coming out of, right? You have to ask yourself, is this something that, is a preference or is this a something that is a non-negotiable to me? Is something that is actually going to move the needle forward, right? That person who makes decisions over preferences is going to do whatever it takes and, is going to burn any boats, right? Like any second options, any, one foot in, one foot out. All right. And another thing too is that your environment is evidence, right? Because, oftentimes is that the person who maybe have had this identity of being overweight and I use these extreme examples to show you that it can happen to anybody, right? So the person who's overweight, maybe their family was overweight, and that's just the way they lived. Maybe the person who, isn't clean. Like if your house isn't clean, you can just imagine how you treat yourself, right? Like you can tell a lot about someone just by the way they take care of the things that they own. Is your car clean? Is your workspace pristine? Do you have like a good work environment, right? Because if you're trying to build a new identity, and let's say you're trying to build that identity let's say, for example, you want to be a straight A student in college. You can't be a straight A student if you're in the club. If you're partying up, like you can't do that. It doesn't make any sense, right? Your identity needs to match your the environment around you, right? If you're trying to level up in life, you might have to move out from your hometown to somewhere that challenges you. You need to be surrounded by other killers. You need to be surrounded by people who, like they don't like they're not looking for average. They're not looking for bare minimum, right? Like when I made the move from, the like college town to closer to downtown Tampa, suddenly everyone around me was had their own business, had a strong work ethic, was very driven, and, fitness was a non-negotiable, and everyone was in shape in downtown Tampa. Like I haven't seen someone overweight in a very long time. But it just happens to be that that's the environment that I'm in. So that became a non-negotiable. Like I have not, so and I say this because if all you see is success around you, then you'll be successful too. But if all you see is, debauchery, scarcity, laziness, you're going to end up embodying that identity. So, a little assignment for you guys is that you should really do an audit over your physical location, like where you're at, do your clothes, like do they fit you for a professional? Like if you want to be professional, like how do you look when you go out? Like how do you are you And whenever you like your home, like does it inspire you? Like do you love your home? Like do you feel good when you go home, or do you feel like, like like it doesn't match my work ethic? Or, is your how do you take care of your car? And then look at your digital, and I want you to do a digital audit. Look over who you're following, what content are you consuming? You know, um, are your notifications like what notifications are you seeing? Because if you're, and I recommend having your notifications turned off for at least the first half of the day. Reason why is because, right, that way you have more control over the information that you process. Your brain processes information without you even getting to decide what information you get to process. Because if you got a notification from something that you didn't want to be notified about, but suddenly like you now you have to deal with it because it's a let's say work called you out of nowhere. Well, fuck, now you have to deal with work. But if you can have an audit over your digital life, right? Like what notifications you're allowed to see at certain times, you can have control over the way you think. Suddenly, now when you wake up, no notifications. Your heart isn't racing. You have time in the morning for yourself. You have time to actually get the day started. You actually have time to, you feel like you just that alone, just by not having something else in the background running, suddenly you can perform a lot better. Like you actually get a good workout because you're not thinking of work, you're not thinking of school, of bills coming up, you're not thinking of any life stressors, anything that could be reminded of you from your phone. So make sure that you have control over the media that you're and the information that you're processing. Look at your inbox. Make sure that's been checked off. And and then also like when it comes to your wallpaper, a really good thing that has been super helpful is just like go to your notes and just put down your quarterly goals for the quarter, and and with a date, and get super specific. Like, maybe put down like I'd say three goals, and have that be your screen, the wallpaper on your phone. So that way that you see it very often. Like everything, it should always be, the wallpaper should inspire you, and the people you're following should inspire you. It should be, everything should bring you closer to that identity that you want to embody. All right. So, and here's like a live exercise I want you guys to do real quick is like in the chat, and take your time with this, but I want you to just label out like what are just three things that your ideal avatar does every single day without fail. And go ahead and put that in the chat real quick. What are three things that they do every day without fail? Things that you can control, like habits. So these are, because if you're attached to a sale, then that's still coming out of a place like you're looking for a result, more than a habit that you can start. So, if you're looking, you can control your workout. You can control, what content you put out. You cannot control what happens inside of your business. I mean, aside from, the inputs. Your inputs is what controls your business. If you focus on the result, it's kind of like saying like, I if I'm I can only be this person if I'm a millionaire, or I can only be this person if I have a six pack and abs, and if I'm top of my class. I can only have straight A's if I have it already, you know. But make my bed, listen to a 10-minute Bible study podcast, don't skip meals, even if I'm tired and or I didn't cook anything. That's good. Yeah. Make your bed, listen to a 10-minute Bible study podcast, don't skip meals. Good. Nice. And then being active, working out, taking care of yourself, self-care, health-care, fill your cup, talk to family, see how they are. Nice. So those habits are things that I want you guys to put as like just three things that you're gonna do every day. All right. Now this is something that just has to be like as a non-negotiable. Because again, something as simple as making your bed in the morning gives you your first win before the day even starts. So that alone is gonna really help when it comes to your your productivity, how you feel, all that. Let me go ahead and reshare the screen. All right. So now this is your only homework is your just for one day. All right, 24 hours. What I want you guys to do is, you look at those three things, you know, instill that. But when you wake up, all right, don't hit snooze. Like give yourself something that you can commit to, right? And be in character. Your future self attacks today, get up immediately. All right. And dress exactly how your future self would dress. Even if you're not planning on going out anywhere, right? Like if you have like an off day, like, you really want to make sure that you dress as if you've achieved all your goals, as if you had like the best month ever, as if you're having the best day ever. And decisions that you have to make, you want to make them fast, right? Because the highest version of yourself doesn't wait months to make decisions. The faster you can make decisions, the faster you can progress in anything. Doesn't matter if you have, any fitness goals, your lifestyle goals, mindset, faith-driven goals, financial goals, business goals, career goals. The faster you can make decisions, the faster you can advance. All right? You want to get your results, this year, in not when you're 80. So, make sure that you eat clean, do the hard work. But those are the only three things. So wake up, no snooze, dress how your future self would dress, and the decisions you make them as if your future self would make them. So, and just try it for 24 hours and just see how your perspective shifts. Awesome. So, with that being said, it's pretty much